My name is Brent Ellisons. My handle is 6E, SIXIE, number 6 letter E. This is part 3 of how police enforce crime for revenue and control and are a severe social threat. Today's going to be focused on logistics, transportation, housing, etc. Last video I touched on CoreCivic, Damon T. Heininger, and their exploitative business model. I'm not done with them, because they also own a logistics, a transportation company to shuffle inmates around. It's too expensive for the state, to each county to pay to go get somebody that they have a warrant to extradite. They just out-contract. They get pay so much per inmate, and it's much cheaper in the long run. They are not the only ones, obviously. There's U.S. Corrections, PTS, there's Advanced Corrections, JPATS, which I'm definitely going to get into, especially for the A in their name, and then Transcor is the one owned by CoreCivic. These are multi-million-dollar businesses just to move people around. An officer or somebody in the community said somebody did something they didn't like, and it violated politician wording, so now they're just getting, and that I'll get into later as well, that shuffling about as a punishment. It's called diesel or bus therapy. It's disgusting, but it's definitely a tactic. On these, I'm going to also speak, probably speak mostly about U.S. corrections, as that's the one that I have the most experience with, and people that I know have. There are people, like, it's atrocious the way that they treat people. They'll pack, 15 people into a space meant for 10. The sides of the van are angled up like this, so that the people who are shackled in the row are forced to lean forward this way the entire time. And this is, weeks, 5 days, 10 days, and there are people who have been on some extensive trips. If they really, really don't like you, they'll put you in holdover places, such as Marlin, Texas. Basically, it's you and about, 100 other dudes just in a big room with a bunch of bunks in it and a couple of toilets. Like, that's it. Cards, books, nothing. You're just in holdover. You're not allowed to have anything, as they fear that everything is a liability issue, because they have a contract. They're responsible. So if you are deposited, shelved, housed in their warehouse, and then you get on a truck, a freight to go somewhere, and you acquired something, then that facility, their security is in question. So you just sit there and talk, and it is absolutely dehumanizing to do people this way. And there are select individuals who file lawsuits about it, but I've seen what happens to them. They don't win them. The only people who seem to win lawsuits against U.S. corrections and other are employees that worked for them and filed a suit about pay or hours or working conditions, etc. Whenever an inmate it's the robed authority seems to always find a reason why it's not too valuable to the economy and control. Justin Williams versus U.S. Corrections. I'll link these in the description. There's Edward Kavari. That's and then Dr. William Weintraub. Like, those are just some examples of people who are who have been treated atrociously, or have died in their transport, for neglect, medical, etc. I think Weintraub, what was it, an ulcer? The autopsy showed. Most of the guards for these transport corporations are veterans. So these are people who have gone and taken Uncle Sam's entire doctrine. They've completely erased their mental hard drive and replaced it with the American flag of, Native American genocide, the stars and stripes, their star-spangled banner. They come back, like, these people are taught that it's acceptable under certain conditions to dehumanize other people. If you label them a criminal, or the way the military are insurgents, etc., call them something, label them something, and then you are now permitted to dehumanize them with the approval of the general public. Who else would do that, though? Who else with a conscience and rational, logical mental processing would voluntarily, really, even for a paycheck, treat people this way? It's socially acceptable under certain circumstances, apparently. But, these logistics companies, there's almost no oversight. Lawsuit, whatever. Just keep going. J-Pats. They have alien in their name. Just their name is just dehumanizing. You are no longer a human, you are an alien. That's a lot of the feds' arrests are for deportees. So they're just like alien. These people who are trying to escape horrid conditions to come to a place where people throw away 40% of edible food, where there's more empty homes than homeless, and where corporations treat people like garbage so those people don't want to work for them. Nobody wants to be exploited. Working for self, working to provide for self has been turned into clocking in for a corporation or the state. The corporate state is not a valid existence. Most of them, if you will notice, most people who work for the state and wear suits, who are executives in corporations, administrators, they do negative labor. In other words, existentially, though people hate that word, existentially, they could not provide what they enjoy, the comforts and conveniences and luxuries that they enjoy on a daily basis, if they worked all day, every day, doing the manual labor for the rest of their lives. For example, picture every component on their vehicle that they drive. Everything that they own. If they had to sit down and make it themselves, they couldn't do it. It's all the labor of others. But they fancy themselves virtuous for how they dehumanize foreigners, the lower class, lower tax bracket people. But having military as police and corrections officers, that's not healthy. Like, that's Stanford Prison Experiment on steroids. Now, some of these... okay. Well, before I get into the corporations that profit so heavily from the incarceration of so many people, on these, like, U.S. corrections, on their stops, you'll travel for days, but what they do is they don't give you sack lunches. They stop at a fast food place and just pack your stomach and your body full of grease and all that. So what I'm doing with, 4 or 5 other people sitting next to me, like, they're miserable because I'm farting on them horribly, right? And I'm miserable because I'm trying to hold it in and I can't. Like, that's crazy. And to subject people to that, you're forced in the box. Like, there's no ventilation. You're gonna stuff them full of, extremely, things that are gonna cause intestinal distress, and then coupled with whatever medications they may be taking, you're just going to leave them tucked in there for days. That's when I saw one of the guys, like, he was in there for marijuana. He was getting transported around because Florida don't like the cannabis. Right? Well, I saw him afterwards, and I had to sincerely apologize to that man. Like, I'm grateful that he understood that it was really out of my control, just as it was some of the other people, but nobody's body was reacting to that fast food like mine was. But gratefully he understood. He didn't hold it against me, and was actually awesome enough to even laugh about it. So, but to put people in situations like this, it's humiliating, it really is. But now back to the profiteering corporations. Wackenhut is similar to CoreCivic. Same principles, private prisons, contract with the state. After so many problems, Wackenhut has now rebranded themselves as the Geo Group a few years ago. And there are corporations such as Vanguard and BlackRock that you don't hear about because, like, connected directly with this profiteering of dehumanization, because they're distanced from it. But a lot of their income is derived from these private prisons, etc. So if you look at Vanguard or BlackRock, there's a lot of others. They definitely, it behooves them to keep people shuffling about and being housed in these horrible places. Now, that to me kind of shows why the suits are more inclined to agree with a suit filed by an ex-employee rather than an inmate or a victim of, that was being shuffled about. So picture veterans that are police now, and they are traveling weeks at a time with us in the back. They're tired. Like the hotels, if they want to get a hotel, they have to pay out of pocket. So they usually opt to just keep going. We just have to sleep in the back no matter what. So that doesn't matter to them. So these people are tired, they're cranky, they're on the road all the time. They don't always have, nice beds or flat beds even. So that doesn't create a good relationship. It doesn't create a healthy environment for the captives or the captors. It's too beneficial to the economy, though. You notice that? People being dehumanized, exploited by the state and other corporations. It is just so necessary to keep their economy functioning. If you resist doing what they tell you to do, like say you're at a facility already, having been transported, and say you have to go work now. You refuse to go work. For example, Colorado, they filed a suit violating. It says that forced labor violates the 13th. It's a loophole in the 13th Amendment, but they're saying it violates the state constitution. I didn't read Colorado's state constitution. The state says that it incentivizes good behavior, yet thousands of inmates are being written up for refusing to go. And if your premise for what you consider good behavior is labor, well, now you understand why you clock in or you go to prison and you're forced to clock in, and then if you don't, you get to sit in solitary, or you get diesel therapy. You get shuffled about just Go to one place, be there for 2 days, 3 days, get settled in, immediately transported to another one. 2 or 3 days, 4 days, settled in, immediately transported to another one. All across the country. There are vacant seats on some of these 841 daily prison movements by, JPATs and however many U.S. corrections in them are doing. They can find a place for you to just send you to another place to hold over for a time. See, people often think that abuse of prisoners, abuse of people, is just always, with batons, with guns, with knives, grouping up, hurting physically. A lot of it is really this socially depraved behavior that is permitted because it falls within politician wording, right? So basically, their policies and their mandates say, well, it doesn't say we can't do this. Now you have sexually depraved, people that have beat up old people in senior citizen homes, in with people who will refuse to testify or got caught with an arbitrary amount of cannabis, 1 ounce, 2 ounce, whatever the rich suit decreed for that specific geographic boundary, and excluding, the sexually depraved who get their own unit usually. Most everybody else is housed together. And you have an established, the system is dystopian for sure, but when you're inside a prison facility, the social construct inside there that people are forced into because of police, but also because of other inmates, the power hungry, those that want control, these gangs fighting with these gangs, and then you have people that don't want to be in gangs, and if you don't want to be in gangs, then you have to ride solo. But the thing is, if you ride solo, you're called independent. Well, now what happens is you have all these independent dudes. I'm independent. Well, now independent is a gang. It's like, you want to be left alone, that's almost impossible. And if you are unfortunate enough to be one of the ones with severe, debilitating mental health issues that really didn't do a crime that is worth what you're going through, and you're not a fighter, you're not able, you don't have that, you get preyed upon, but there's a common misconception that, it's just everybody's raping left and right in prison. Now, occasionally, force does happen, but a lot of times it's consensual, or there will be a part of there's an Oklahoma. You don't even need to use them specifically. There's lots of, Aryan gangs, and they have punks. They have they have gumps. They have dudes that they call these things. You're a punk, you're a gump, and if you want to be in our gang, then you have to vacuum our phallus with your facial orifice. Now, it'll take them a bit to understand what I just said, probably, but I'm trying to make this talk more informative and less abrasive. So that's why I worded it that way. But these people, I am not defending the gangs. I don't like gangs. I stand alone. I always do. But I am saying that if people were not forced to exist this way, if people were not forced into an environment, right? We compete for resources in society, but in prison, that competition resource is even worse. And it is not a healthy environment to force people into. And the problems that arise from that are guaranteed. And it's repeatedly shown. So, to continue forcing that, but then act like, well, if we change this little thing about it, then maybe it'll solve the issue. No. No. Dehumanizing people is a problem. It needs to stop. And it stops withdrawal. It stops with the withdrawal of your consent.